My strongest aspect was actually the performing part of rhythmic gymnastics because, you were getting points on lines and catching the apparatus, but also points on how you were presenting yourself and the artistic part. So that was actually already when I was doing the gymnastic things. So I was like, okay, so what can I do to make myself stand out in a way? Because I'm not dancing at the moment. Yes, I'm teaching. So I was like, I need to train some new things in the time I'm not dancing. So I started singing. I did one circus intensive. In the beginning, I was like, oh, why did they mic me? But in the end, I was very grateful for that, because dancing is one thing, but dancing and singing together, the cardio is on a complete different level. So it taught me a lot about how to breathe.
Welcome to the Theatre Art Life podcast. Today we are talking with Helena De Graeve. Helena is a 27-year-old dancer, dance teacher and choreographer, born and raised in Zulte, Belgium. At a young age, Helena was part of the national rhythmic gymnastics team in Belgium and took part in several World Cups and the European Games in Bremen in 2010. After finishing her Bachelor of Education in Dance at Codarts Rotterdam, the Netherlands, Helena joined a contemporary company named Chrysalis by Jodie Blemings in London. In 2019, she moved to Macau to join the cast of The House of Dancing Water from Dragone as a dancer. The pandemic forced her to focus on her work as a teacher and choreographer, and she improved her skills as a performing artist. She joined a project in Ibiza named Animus Omnis by Manumisson and played in the large-scale spectacle musical The Red Star Line in Belgium. She is currently on tour with the Little Prince of Tournie and Mouron, where she plays the role of Rose. Helena, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here.
Nice to have you. It's funny, we were just talking before we started about, we just missed each other in Macau, but we actually met each other in Riyadh.
Yes, in January 2023, actually. Yes. Yeah.
So I saw The Little Prince there, and it's just beautiful. It's just such a simple, beautiful show. Are you enjoying playing in that show?
Yes. It's an amazing show to be part of. It's something new actually, because I am playing the role of the Rose, it's a really hard role because there are so many aspects which are important. Like she's very fragile, and then she's getting born fragile. She's discovering this whole new world, and then there's this little princess. So there's a lot of things happening in that role. So for me, this was in the beginning, it was really hard to find because she's strong because she's a rose and she has thorns. She thinks she can defend many things. So now I did 80 shows and I'm starting to understand what it's about, I think, because we are currently on tour in Europe, so we are doing a bit more. But it's such a magical show to be part of, also because I'm dancing, I'm doing a little bit of aerial. There are so many talented artists involved. Also, to be working with Tournie is really, it's a real pleasure. Yeah. So it's a really, really nice show.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I want to rewind a little bit. So you started as a rhythmic gymnast, and so tell us about your journey path or your transition from being in World Cups and European Games to the world of performance. What was that, and how did that happen?
Well, ever since I was a little child, I felt like I wanted to be a performer. So for me, every time when I was doing competitions, my strongest aspect was actually the performing part of rhythmic gymnastics, because you were getting points on lines and catching the apparatus, but also points on how you were presenting yourself and the artistic part. So that was actually already when I was doing the gymnastic things, one of my strongest aspects, and what I was getting back from the judges many times. Like when it was a dramatic exercise, I was making it very dramatic. And when it was happy, I was smiling a lot. Because that was the thing I loved most. So when I turned 16, I changed high schools. And I decided to do a high school for dance. And then I combined rhythmic gymnastics and dancing for a long time. But then I felt like on stage, it gave me, you were not getting points for what you were doing. It gave me less stress in a way, because competitions always in a way they made me stressed because I had to catch my apparatus and the grades had to be good. But being able to perform, I don't know, it gave me, how can you say that? Yeah, I felt like I was coming home, and the switch for me wasn't so big in a way, because I always did my competitions like I was performing, you
Yeah,
know?
sure.
Yeah. The only hardest thing was at the moment I changed when I was 16. So I was combining. I was training like 48 hours, and I had to make a decision: or you do gymnastics or you continue in dancing. And for me, dancing was a more logical choice because I love to be creative. And I felt like we say this thing in Belgium, I could lose my egg a bit more in the creative part of dancing. So yeah, I continued that. Yes.
Did your parents or other family in performing arts or in sports, or this was sort of your own path?
And this was sort of my own path. Yes. No, my parents, no, no one of my family is a performer. Yeah, they're all, or they're in care, or my dad has a restaurant. My grandfather is a farmer. So it's like completely the opposite. Yeah.
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue, but they knew it from the moment. It's actually very funny. I was born, and my mom was like, she had the feeling I was going to be an artist. So she gave everyone, like, we give like sugar or like a little gift when someone is born, and she gave everyone violins. So it's really funny. She was like, oh, I think this one is going to be an artist. So it's cool how it went.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think mothers do tend to have a feeling about their children, as a parent myself, about what kind of people they're going to be. So your mum was on point.
Yes.
So you've been in some large scale and some small scale shows. Like, what is it about getting work or a project that attracts you, and what's your biggest sort of growth? When you look about your career thus far, what's the biggest growth spurt that you've had in a job?
Well, that's a good question. I think, well, for me, actually, what helped me a lot in growth was going to Codarts, actually, where I did the dance and education, because um, I didn't study to be a performer. I studied to be a teacher, actually. And that's where it helped me to understand way more about how to dance, because obviously when you're a gymnast, you're learning the movements, how they have to be. So if you have to pull a line on the sides with your arm, you do it and you copy it. But when you're learning to be a teacher, you're learning how the shoulders have to be, and you're analyzing it way more. So for me to do that education, it helped me a lot to grow as a dancer, because I was standing there. I was like, okay, I'm learning how to do it, and I can project that later on when I will be a teacher or when I'm a choreographer. I know how to do the movements more and I can explain it better, but it made myself a better dancer because I understood better what I was doing. Like the first 3 years of when I was a dancer, I was just copying and trying to understand. And because it was a lot of information, obviously, because going from a rhythmic gymnast to a dancer, it looks the same because there is a lot of dance required, but it's on a whole, it's different. It's not. So for me, doing the teacher was, for me, the best growth to later go on performing, where I learned a lot in the different jobs I did. Like after I joined Chrysalis, because I graduated, and Chrysalis is like It's a company, but we're not getting paid. So it was kind of a training program with Jodie Blemings, who is, for me, he is very talented and inspiring. So then when I joined that company, I learned more about the performer aspect. Yeah, I learned that as well in school in Codarts, but it deepened me more. I learned more technique in a different way, more the company work. Like in school, we have of course we have the performance part, but then it was more the company work. So yeah, for me, I think I made the biggest growth in school because I learned to analyze the body more.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's really
If you
interesting.
understand what I mean.
Oh, 100%, because I practiced yoga for many years, and when I trained to be a teacher, it kind of elevated my practice as well, because you're learning all of the things about, the way the body works, and the little nuances of how to go deeper into a posture and work on. And also I don't know if you have taught dance, but when I teach yoga, I learn as much as the student, because you're watching. You can't see your own body when you're practicing yoga much. You only feel it. But when you're looking at dancers or acrobats, when you teach them, you're like, oh, I know. I can tell an acrobatic body on a yoga mat, and I can tell a dancer body on a yoga mat, and I can know exactly what they're going to do as a default from their training that I need to undo in a yoga practice, right? So because
Yes.
so much extreme, I often say with like yoga teachers, actually easier if they've never done anything, because they kind of don't bring any regimented training into the practice, whereas people who are elite athletes or dancers or ballerinas, they come with such a strong foundation in another discipline that you have to work away from when you're doing yoga. So yeah, I totally identify with that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you say that.
Yeah.
But then to learn it so young for you as well, which is great, right? Like you're still early in your career, so to have that foundation is wonderful. So
Yeah. 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 It for me. That was one of the most interesting things. I remember when I just joined Codarts, there was one teacher, and she came and she was like, "Oh, you're gymnast," because I was just doing Batmans. I was I was
like,
not controlling the hips or anything. I mean, I did because I had a training in Belgium already a bit, but yeah, I mean, in 3 years, you cannot take most of the dances they start when they're 4 years young. So it was really interesting to make that change and to understand what to do with the hips and why and how to explain to your students later on. So it was really, yeah, for me, that was,
yeah. I
yeah,
think it's
I'm
funny
happy.
because sometimes people who are not in the industry may have a perception that you just go and be a dancer, but it is a lifetime of training, right? And it's a lifetime of work and discovering different disciplines. And, you know, even as an untrained person, for me, I can tell whether somebody has done ballet training or not when they dance, right? Like, I think there's a certain
Yes.
way that people hold themselves if they've done ballet as to those who may have just done contemporary dance, and it's very easily for me to see that on a stage. So it's funny, even me, because I'm not even a dancer and I wouldn't even know where to
Oh, it's
start. I got
interesting.
two left.
Yeah.
But it's
No, yeah.
doing it for
But
25 years, right? So yeah. Yeah.
yeah, after you learn how different, I mean, every dancer is unique and different, but you still have each training. So of course, if you're in the industry, at one moment you start to realize and analyze what the base is, and then you can, yeah. But for me, this was one of the hardest things also I think it took me 8 years before they stopped telling me that I was a gymnast. And now they're like, oh, you were a gymnast. It's
Yeah, you've
funny how
moved
it
it out of
changed.
your system.
now, now I'm happy when I do it like that. In the beginning, I was always like, stop saying I was a gymnast. I want to be a dancer now.
But also,
So,
I think that what's great about like a gymnast background too, in terms of training and discipline, like there's also a mentality that comes from gymnastic background that I
oh,
think
yeah.
is a wonderful foundation for that evolution, because there's so much, same with ballet too, there's so much discipline required to show up every day and keep working at that craft. And And that, when you're training that at a young age, that sets you up for a certain, you show up, right? Like, and there's, I'm always with much respect to people who have come from a gymnastic background, is their physical and mental discipline is quite high. Because if you're going to be good at that craft, you got to go, right? Like, you got to work at
Yeah,
it.
no, true. Yeah, it's true. Like even when you are running late, like even if you're on time, you'd still message like, oh, I might run late, even though you're like
Yeah,
exactly on time. I think it's from gymnastics. I still do that because I remembered like my coach. I was always messaging her because it's discipline, you know. But I'm really grateful for that too. Like I had the best coach ever. So yeah.
yeah. What have you had any sort of thus far, like any particular challenges? You know, has work come easy to you, or has there been a particular project that's been challenging for you thus far?
Well, it it didn't come easy. Like when I graduated Codarts, I really wanted to be a performer in the beginning. I saw myself as a teacher because I love teaching as well. But I was like, I'm still young. I kind of want to stand on stage still. And I did many auditions after that, but it was really hard to find a performer job. So I think I did like 30 auditions, and then it was the end of the summer. And in September, I was like, I might have to start working or just doing something, but I don't want to, because the the mistake we tend to make after doing, it's not a mistake, but we tend to do after graduating is immediately go into teaching and then have no spare time to do the auditions anymore. So I was like, I have to earn money in a way, but I want to dance. So then like at the end of August, there was one audition for Chrysalis and I was finally invited to do one. And I was like, okay, let's go. And then I passed it. Like always in the end, when I expect to not have something, it came. So then I did Chrysalis and I didn't do any auditions then. And then the house came all of a sudden on my path, which kind of came easy in a way. I was always a big fan of the house. So I did the audition when it was in Rome and I didn't pass it. I didn't even pass the first round. And then at the end of Chrysalis, all of a sudden I got a message like, hey, do you want to get into the House of Dancing Water? We think your profile might fit with what we need. So that one came quite easy, even though it was always my dream to get into this show. So that was easy. But then, then COVID came. And then I found it very hard to find a new performer job because first, the performance industry was closed. So there was not so many things to do. So I started teaching again. I did some choreographies here and there, which for me was good to do as well because I love teaching. I was very happy that I had that degree also back at the time. So I could come back to Belgium and say, look, hi, I'm a teacher. Do you want a teacher? But I did a lot of auditions. I think I did 20 or 30, 40 auditions again to find something. And obviously it was also harder back then because when there was an audition, there were so many dancers without a job. So I felt like all the dancers were going on to the same job that I wanted to have as well. So I invested a lot back then. So I was like, okay, so what can I do to make myself stand out in a way? Because I'm not dancing at the moment. Yes, I'm teaching. So I was like, I need to train some new things in the time I'm not dancing. So I started singing. I did one circus intensive. And then I crossed by an audition of the Red Star Line in Belgium. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try that one. Even though I was not planning to settle back again in Belgium. I was like, I still want to work abroad because I love working everywhere in the world to see different cultures react on shows and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm going to give it a chance. You know, I did some singing now, so let's see. And then I got the opportunity to work in the Red Star Line, which was really interesting as well, because I don't know if you saw a trailer of the show, but the audience is actually moving. It's a moving audience. So it's completely different to go off stage. So I'm very grateful to have worked also with Martin Michel, who is like a legend in Belgium and the Netherlands, for musical. And then The Little Prince came along. I saw this audition in Paris, and I was like, oh, I'm so done with auditions. I tried so many times, but then one friend said, oh, I might try. And I was like, okay, if you're going, I haven't seen you in a long time. Let's try it also. And then I passed it. So it was a really long process, and it was really hard to find some jobs. And I do find like I fought a lot to get some things. But the things I got, because I'm also picky. There are some dance jobs I don't see myself doing because it's not the kind of dancer I am. But in a way, it was a long way, but it gave me, I think, for me, the best jobs possible, and where I learned a lot from. Yeah.
And now a note from our sponsor. The Theatre Art Life podcast is proud to be sponsored by Clearcom. Clearcom is the leader in voice communications for theatre and the performing arts. Call your cues with the simplicity and elegance of Clearcom Intercom solutions. You can find them at clearcom.com. Go check them out. Well, it's super fortunate that you've, had enough opportunities to even have a point of choice, right? Like that's definitely on the back end of the pandemic. And I think that a lot of people who do make it in the industry mostly have persistence, right? Even there needs to be talent, of course, but like if you're going to keep getting work, you need to keep showing up and being persistent. So it's not I guess you hit a certain echelon where the work comes to you, but for most people, it's a grind just to get from gig to gig to gig, right? But tell us, you sang in the Red Star Line? You ended up singing as well?
Yes, I was singing. It was a journey, let's say, because I remember I came in the audition, and they were looking for singers who dance and dancers who can sing. In the end, it all combined. But I remembered I did the dancing run. I was like, okay, I could do this one. I think I did it pretty good, but I had to prepare a song, and I literally arrived in the audition hiding my face to sing because it was me, a camera, and then the judges, and they were like, "Oh, you're a dancer, no?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm a dancer. I'm not a singer, and let's see how it goes." And then they were like, "It was quite good, actually." And then in the end, they had some mic'd dancers and some dancers who were not mic'd but still doing the show. I was like, I'm not gonna be. I'm not gonna be mic'd. There are so many talented singers. They're all so good. I think I'm fine. And then the first week I arrived and I saw I was singing as well, and I was like, oh my God. And I cannot read the notes also. So I remember the first rehearsal, the first week was just singing actually. And everyone just immediately started singing because they can all read it. And me, I was sitting there panicking. And then they were like, oh, at the end of the week, we're going to record the CD actually for the show. And I was like, how am I going to do this? Because I cannot practice this at home because I cannot read it. And everyone was just going. And also they were like, oh, you're alt 1, alt 2, sopran 1, sopran 2. So, okay, Helena, you're alt 1. And I was like,
what does that even mean?
What does that even mean? What is happening? And also because they're all singing together, I was like, I don't know who I have to follow. So I was recording, and then I did sing some songs on the CD, but some songs I playbacked really well because I was like, I cannot, I don't know it well enough. And then in the end, because the stage is huge, it's like a football field. We are all mic'd and we could make our own mix. So I could say on stage, like, okay, I just want the voice of this and this and this artist who are alt 1 in my ear. And for the rest, I don't want to hear anyone. So in the end, I ended up mirroring. So I was very lucky with that. But in the beginning, it was a struggle. There was one rehearsal. This is actually a very funny story. They were like testing the mics and they wanted to hear if you could hear me, So then they were like, okay, you have to sing. but it was all together. But I was like, yeah, but the mic is on. I don't know if I dare to sing, So I was singing really quiet, like you couldn't hear my voice. And then for the entire room, because we were with an ensemble of 45 artists, they were like, Helena, why are you not singing? Because they could see it on the monitor. And I was like, yeah, but I'm sick. And they were like, no, you have to sing, because I was like, and everyone knew that I was really shy. So they were all laughing with me because they knew I was not singing because I was scared, But in the end, I think I did like 180 shows. I think I managed to sing correctly.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean, that's such a big step, right? Because everything you've done up until that point has been without your voice. And that's not a small
Yeah.
threshold to cross, right? To become confident in singing.
Yeah. It was a challenge. I'm really grateful they gave me the chance to sing, because it was something I wanted to learn as well. I was in the pandemic. I was like, oh, I might want to get better in musical. And then in the beginning, I was like, oh, why did they mic me? But in the end, I was very grateful for that, because dancing is one thing, but dancing and singing together, the cardio is on a complete different level. So it yeah, it taught me a lot about how to breathe in a different way also, So yeah, it was a challenge, but I'm very grateful I could do both.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just tell us briefly, just because I don't know this show, but the show that you did in Ibiza, Alien Animus Omnis, what was that?
Well, it was a show from Manumisson, and like in the 90s, Manumisson was one of the founding clubs in Ibiza, which made Ibiza. They were in London, they were in Ibiza. Um, and it was a show from Jodie Blemings again, who I was with in Chrysalis, who was choreographing, and he was like, "Oh, Helena, might you be interested in doing this show?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, why not? Might be fun." And it was actually in a club outside, in a beach club next to a pool. And there were, so the concept was, people, they were partying, and 5 times in that day, for a period of 10 minutes, aliens were taking over the show. And then there would start a contemporary performance, which was sometimes breaking the fourth wall. So sometimes we were going inside of the audience, sometimes we were even going inside of the pool. And sometimes it was standing on a stage, which was combined. There were like 2 pole dancers in the back, one singing artist, one DJ, and then 5 dancers, 3 boys, 2 girls. Yeah, and it was contemporary dance, but it was all in 5 different tableaus. So it was in 5 different jackets, let's say, on music of like Amy Winehouse was in there, Seven Nation Army. And actually, it was really interesting, because the people who we are performing for, like if you have had the stage, they were standing almost on the stage and like smashing. But the vibe it was giving to you was completely different, because obviously the people were in a beach club, so they were a bit drunk because they're in Ibiza. But it was giving you a complete different style of performing, because they were all standing, and you felt the audience was with you there, so it was kind of this show. We only did 3 shows, but it was a really cool and interesting experience.
Yeah. I really like performance that gets out into places like that, that breaks that fourth wall and surprises people in places
Yeah.
that they don't. It's always a good show to do. That's awesome. So we always finish our podcast with a few questions that we ask. And so my first one is, what is your most favorite thing about your job or the industry?
My most favorite, there are a lot. That's a good question. I think my most favorite thing is being able to work with a lot of new and inspiring people, I think. because I didn't do many dancer shows, but I also did shows with musical artists. I did shows with circus performers. I did shows with actors, and they all inspired me in a way, like they all have their different stories, they all have their different background, just like you said in the beginning. So I think that's my most favorite part, because I love choreographing as well, and they all inspire me with their movements, and I love taking that within me when I continue choreographing or creating stuff. So I think that's my most favorite thing. And also, when you see some performers, they amaze you, and and that sticks with you. And when you go on stage, like every time when I see a performer, I'm like, okay, this I liked a lot in this performer, so I'm going to try to do this today and this today. And everyone you meet makes you a better performer. So I think that's my most favorite thing, meeting new people and new inspiration everywhere. Yeah.
Amazing. And if you could change one thing about your job or the industry, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, there are always, I think, not having to audition anymore. That's a good one. But in a way, it's important. So you have to see. Um, Maybe sometimes when you do jobs, sometimes it works a lot with contacts. And when you're new in the industry, or when you had a different path and you haven't met so many people, it's really hard to get in somewhere, because sometimes people who know people get the jobs easier. So I think I would change that aspect. Like, okay, it's good to have contacts, but it's also good to, like I said, it actually comes close to my favorite thing, to meet new people. Like some auditions, I feel like I had auditions that I was standing there and that people were kissing each other, like, hi, it's nice to see you again. And I see that those people going on, so that's one thing that for me was the biggest struggle a bit.
Open the door a little bit and take some new
Yes.
people in from time to time, right?
Yes. I think that's the thing. Like, I know it's important to have contacts, and like, if people are good, they are good, and it's normal. You keep on giving those jobs, but sometimes it's good to just take in new people, because you never know what they might bring. And sometimes the first performers, or sometimes good performers, are just not good in auditioning. You don't know, and maybe you have to have a little bit more rounds, or change the audition you're doing to get to know the performers more. Yeah. So that's one thing I found a struggle. Yeah.
And if you think about interesting podcast guest, who would you nominate in your circle of friends or network?
I have a few, actually. I would nominate Jodie Blemings.
I was going to ask Jodie Blemings would have been on your list, because I would love to have him on the podcast.
Yes, because he's just an inspiration in general. Like, you should have a talk with him, because his movements, but also when he was creating pieces, the way he was making pieces, it was just so inspiring to look at. And also, it's maybe weird, but Martin, he's my boyfriend. He's an artist as well, and I found him really interesting to talk to, because he does production, but he is also an artist. So his vision on creation and being an artist is really, really interesting. So I would nominate probably Jodie Blemings and Martin Klaas, which is weird because the second one is my boyfriend. But yeah, we have many talks about being an artist and being in the industry. So that's why, yeah.
Amazing. No, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Helena, for joining us on the Theatre Art Life podcast. It's been great to see you again and get to know you a little bit better through this conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you. Yeah, it was really interesting conversation. It was nice to talk a bit about performance as artists. world. So thank you.
Time in Macau.
Thank you. Enjoy Singapore.
Theatre Art Life is a global media site for entertainment. Memberships start at only $38 per year. You can have unlimited access to our daily published articles, including entertainment news and the writings of active industry professionals, ensuring that you are always up to date on the global happenings in the world of entertainment. Become a part of the international entertainment community and join us now at www.theatreartlife.com.